Earlier this week, on my video about 7 times teams activated buyback clauses, subscriber Bobby Delanio, and I struggle to believe that's their real name, but all I can say is congratulations if so, commented asking if there were any cases of managers having managed both a club team and a national team at the same time. The answer to that question is yes, there have been a fair few occasions in which that has happened in fact. Of course, I could end the video there on the grounds that I've answered Bobby's question, but the rest of you might have grounds to feel a little shortchanged. To ensure that isn't the case, I've picked a random 7 interesting examples of managers who have managed club and national teams at the same time for your viewing pleasure. Now, as I say, there have been many more than 7, but I've decided not to include honourable mentions, just so I don't spoil things on the off chance that you all absolutely love this video, and consequently, I decide to make a part 2. Without further ado then, here are 7 managers who have managed a club side and a national team at the same time. Alex Ferguson. We might as well start this 7 in style, and that's exactly what I'm doing with arguably the greatest football manager of all time. Alex Ferguson was a serial winner in the club game, most famously at Manchester United, but also at Aberdeen. Ferguson's time on the international stage is less well remembered and less celebrated, and understandably so, given that the Scot spent just 9 months managing the Scottish national team. Back in the summer of 1985, Ferguson had just begun what would become his last full season as manager of Aberdeen. Fresh off the back of a 3rd Scottish Premier Division title, Ferguson's reputation in Scotland was sky high, and he was also serving as Jock Stein's assistant with the national team at the time. In the final game of Scotland's 1986 World Cup qualifying campaign, a 1-1 draw with Wales sealed Scotland's place in Mexico, but there will be no celebrations among the Scottish players or fans that evening. Moments before the referee blew the final whistle, Jock Stein collapsed, and he later died in the treatment room at Ninian Park. It was a tragic loss to the British game and to all who knew him, and Alex Ferguson was asked to take charge of Scotland in preparation for and at the 1986 World Cup. He accepted, whilst appointing Archie Knox as his co-manager at Aberdeen to relieve some of his workload. Scotland were knocked out in the group stages in Mexico, having been handed a horrible draw. Meanwhile, Aberdeen slipped to their worst league finish since Ferguson's first season. The Scot resigned as Scotland boss following the finals. He left Aberdeen for Manchester United in November 1986, and the rest, as they say, is history. Ricky Herbert. Ricky Herbert may not carry quite the same global renown and reputation as Alex Ferguson, but he is a significant footballing figure in New Zealand. A talented defender and one of very few early Kiwi footballing exports to Europe, Herbert spent 2 years with Wolverhampton Wanderers during the mid-1980s, as well as winning 61 caps for New Zealand. That made him New Zealand's most capped footballer of all time, a record he would hold on to for the best part of 20 years, and he immediately moved into management after hanging up his boots. Herbert spent a period of 14 years coaching with the national team from 1999 to 2013, serving as the nation's under-23 boss, under-17 boss, assistant manager, and senior manager. He held the latter role, the top job, for some 8 years, during which time he led New Zealand to the 2010 World Cup, a tournament in which they were the only undefeated team. His club and international overlap came during the 2006-07 campaign, coming with New Zealand's sole A-League representatives, the New Zealand Knights, in rather unusual circumstances. When Herbert was asked to step in and take charge of the Knights, it had already been decided that the Knights would have their A-League licence revoked and that the team would be disbanded at the end of the season. The FFA and New Zealand Soccer had to negotiate a deal whereby the Knights could complete their 5 remaining games, and Herbert was drafted in for those last 5 games, of which the team actually won 3, lost 1, and drew 1, having only won 2 games all season prior to that. Herbert left after those 5 games, but continued to manage New Zealand up until 2013, and he now manages Bar FC in the Fijian Premier League. Leonid Slutsky. One of the nicest men in world football. If you ever wonder how disagreeable the Alams are to work with, you need only look at the way in which they broke the remarkable spirit of Leonid Slutsky. Born in Volgograd during the same month in which the Soviet Union launched the Mars 2 space probe, which became the first human-made object to reach the surface of Mars, Slutsky was a goalkeeper, but he made just 13 league appearances for a since-dissolved local lower league side that I have no idea how to pronounce, before being forced into an early retirement. Aged only 19 at the time, Slutsky suffered a knee injury whilst trying to rescue a neighbour's cat from a tree. They say unfulfilled players make for the best managers, and Slutsky moved straight into coaching, gaining his first managerial position at Olympia Volgograd at the age of 30. In October 2009, Slutsky was appointed as the new CSKA Moscow boss, a role which he would hold for the next 7 years. During that time, he won 7 trophies, including 3 Russian Premier League titles, before resigning and turning his attention to coaching in England. Slutsky managed both CSKA Moscow and the Russian national team for more than a year, having been appointed temporarily following the departure of Fabio Capello, but receiving a longer-term contract after securing qualification to Euro 2016. Russia couldn't get out of the group stages in France, prompting Slutsky to resign, and he has since managed Hull City, Vitesse, and current club Rubin Kazan. As a little HITC Sevens bonus, here is the great man himself trying to sign me for the mighty Tigers a few years ago, but I told him I was too committed to building up my YouTube channel. That's the kind of extraordinary commitment you get from me on this channel, so if you're not yet subscribed, feel free to join the HITC Sevens family now. Billy Bingham. Every manager in this 7 is a legend in some part of the world, and Billy Bingham is certainly a legend in Sunderland and Northern Ireland, if not beyond. A fleet-footed and sharp-eyed outside right during his playing days, Bingham spent 8 years with Sunderland, he won a First Division title with Everton, and he racked up 56 caps for Northern Ireland. Following retirement in 1965, Bingham immediately took the reins as first-team boss at Southport, beginning a 23-year managerial career, which began in Merseyside in the 4th Division and ended in the Saudi Arabian capital city of Riyadh with Saudi outfit Al Nazir. Bingham's most notable managerial stint at club level came with his former club Everton, but it was early on in his career whilst managing Southport and later Plymouth Argyle and Linfield that Bingham juggled the duties of managing at both club and international levels simultaneously. He managed Southport from 1965 to 1968, Plymouth Argyle from 1968 to 1970, Linfield from 1970 to 1971, and Northern Ireland for 4 years during that period from 1967 to 1971. During his first stint leading the Green and White Army, Northern Ireland played 20 games, winning 8, drawing 3, and losing 9. Bingham later had a second, much more significant stint in charge of Northern Ireland from 1980 to 1993, during which time he guided the team to 2 British Home Championships, having previously won just 1 in the 96 years prior to his appointment. He also took Northern Ireland to both the 1982 and 1986 World Cups, and Northern Ireland haven't qualified for a World Cup since the 89-year-old stepped down. Erasmus Meekles. It is possible, if trophies are not your primary criteria, to claim that Erasmus Meekles is the greatest football manager of all time. That would be a stretch for me, but there are those who would, and their arguments do have some merit. What Meekles achieved both at club level with Ajax and on the international stage with the Netherlands was quite special, and the game of football would be forever altered by the brilliant teams that he created. Meekles was the brainchild of Ajax's Total Football, inspired by a number of British coaches who had come before him, and also the great Hungarian team of the 1950s. With Johan Cruyff as his understudy and coach out on the pitch, Meekles created something special in Amsterdam, as Ajax went on to win 3 successive European Cups. Meekles only actually won 1 of those 3 as he departed for Barcelona in 1971, but he laid the groundwork for one of the finest football teams ever assembled. It was whilst managing Barcelona that Meekles was appointed as manager of the Dutch national team ahead of the 1974 World Cup. It was at this tournament that Total Football really won the hearts and minds of the world, but they couldn't win the Jules Rimet Trophy, beaten 2-1 by West Germany in the final. Meekles managed the Netherlands on 4 separate occasions in total, finally winning a major international trophy at Euro 1988. Peter Taylor. The Hull City links are strong in this video, although I'm going to disappoint you in as much as I cannot find a photo of myself alongside Peter Taylor, although there is one out there somewhere, most likely at my mum and dad's house. Peter Taylor is a Hull City legend, pure and simple, even if he did insist on keeping all 11 players back when defending a corner. A real managerial nomad, Taylor has had more jobs than the number of games Hull City won last season, and he was famously the man who gave David Beckham the England captaincy during his time managing the Three Lions. Taylor's time with the senior England team was brief, but he managed England's under-21s for 7 years across 2 different stints. It is the second of the 2 that we are interested in, since it involved a 2-year overlap with Taylor's management of Hull City. The former Premier League and England boss was seen as quite the coup when appointed by the Tigers in 2002, and despite a big budget and a shiny new stadium, back-to-back promotions from the 4th Division to the Championship, and then keeping a club there is no mean feat, regardless of the circumstances. During his 16 games in charge of England under-21s, second time around, Taylor won 9, drew 5, and lost 2. He has since managed everyone from Bradford to Bahrain, with stints in India, New Zealand, and Wickham, and the former England boss most recently managed Dagenham and Redbridge in the National League. Guus Hiddink. Quite clearly this 7 is in no particular order, but we make a very strong finish nonetheless, in the form of Guus Hiddink. A fantastic manager who did his best work at Feyenoord, where he won the European Cup in his first job in senior management, Hiddink has managed 7 different club sides and 5 different national teams, or 6 if one includes China's under-21 and under-23 teams. Given the way in which Hiddink has flip-flopped between the club and international game over the last 3 decades, it is perhaps unsurprising that the two should overlap at some stage. They have done so not once, but twice in the case of Guus Hiddink, firstly with PSV and Australia, and later with Chelsea and Russia. Hiddink spent the 2005-06 season managing both PSV and Australia, during which time he won the Eredivisie title, as well as taking Australia to their first World Cup in 32 years, where they reached the knockout stages. Hiddink's second dual club and international stint came in 2009, and was a rather more temporary affair. Hiddink was drafted into Stamford Bridge by his friend Roman Abramovich when Luis Felipe Scolari was sacked following a 1-1 draw with Hull City. Fresh off the back of taking Russia to the Euro 2008 semi-finals, Hiddink won 16 of his 21 games in charge of the Blues, finishing 3rd in the Premier League, and even winning the FA Cup. The 73-year-old has since managed both Turkey and the Netherlands, along with a second interim spell at Chelsea, but has been out of the game since a brief spell working with China's under-21 and under-23 age groups. So that is it from me for today. As I say, there are plenty of others I could mention, but I'll hold off just on the slight chance that you all think this video is the best thing you've ever seen and end up begging for a part 2. Thank you all for watching, hit the like button if you enjoyed today's video, and don't forget to double check that you are subscribed and have notifications turned on for the recently verified and now tick-accompanied world of footballing magnificence that is HITC Sevens. Oh, and if you'd like to follow me on Instagram or Twitter, you can do so with the username HITC Sevens on both.